Welcome, everyone. This is All-Minus-One, and I am Bill. I have to adjust this. uh, I'm not in my usual seat today, so I'm either using my wife's office chair or a little folding middle chair. Today I have a rocker because we had to move some stuff around for Christmas. In any case, guys, we've been talking about, or we started talking about last Friday, the Nazis and how they were actually socialist. And it's not because it's in the name. It's actually because it's in their policies and their actions. Spook said, "Is the show earlier?" And they said, "Did one of those changes in time by an hour thing happen this week?" No, we did that stupid thing several weeks ago, and currently the Eastern time now is the real time. What we do in the summer is the fake time. I don't know why we do it, but whatever. All right, guys. So I might mess around my stuff a little bit here. Make sure I'm not like, my head's like here halfway in the screen. That's not good. You don't want all that negative space. Okay. Sorry, guys. Checking a few things. Entropy was stopped on me there. Make sure it's okay. All right. If you guys want to go over to Entropy, you may. I'm not stopping you. I'm not making you either. But if you want to go over there and leave a super chat, that's how you do it. The links are in the DLive and YouTube description. So let's start off with a few papers aside from the one we were reading last week. The paper we were reading last week is Soviet and Nazi Economic Planning in the 1930s. It is a review from MIT. Now, here we have from Brill.com a paper. Says, what happened? Apparently I can't make that any more big. Let's see if I do it again. Yeah, it shifts everything. There's no way to move it. Anyways, this paper talks about the rise of neo-Nazism after the fall of the Third Reich. And one of the most telling aspects of it is the search for the neo-Nazis to implement National Socialism across the world. Almost like, they believe the same thing that the Nazis believed in. Shelley, you have natural curls, so unfair. Me, yeah. Well, I washed my hair earlier, and it's still a little wet, Shelley, but I put it in a ponytail. It's at that length now where I can do that, and I actually probably will get it cut after the first of the year. Not like all the way off, but the back's pretty long, so kind of going for a John Wick man bob thing, if you will. And it's just I hate messing with my hair. And I'm too particular about aesthetics. Just like I was saying about my head being in the screen, like that stuff just drives me nuts. So if I get a short haircut, I have to maintain it, keep it looking nice. It's just a thing about me. It's part of who I am. Anyways, it says, dreaming of a National Socialist world, the World Union of National Socialists, and the recurring vision of transnational neo-Nazism. In the abstract states, this article will survey the transnational dynamics of the World Union of National Socialists. That's the WUNS. So this is a legit union of folks who are neo-Nazis. From its foundation in 1962 to the present day, it will examine a wide range of materials generated by the organization, including the foundational document, the Coswald Declaration, as well as the membership application details. The WUN's bulletins related magazines such as Stormtrooper, which they got from, of course, the shock troops in Germany, right? And its intellectual journals, National Socialist World and the National Socialist. So you read these papers, these journals that are probably banned everywhere, and not examined by the by the priesthood of the left, and discarded, even though they say specifically what they want. Like, it's no secret that Richard Spencer is essentially a neo-Nazi. I don't think he wants to do harm to other races or ethnicities, but he doesn't believe that they're as, you know, as on par, on equal with Europeans. Now, I think there's a lot of misnomers in this field because there's different, classes or levels of European society as well. I mean, this is the whole race debate thing. It's just kind of, it gets silly because there are just an abundant different number of ethnic groups that function and operate differently in all nations. And they have different values, of course. Although the thing for a nation is to have some common identity and some common value. And this is the problem going on in the West right now, especially in the US, but I'll say, elsewhere. We see it in France, we see it in Germany, we see it in Sweden, we've seen it in the UK. It's going around, and it's going around purposefully in order to atomize everyone, in order to enslave them. So, unless we understand the tactics that our enemies use, and we understand that their moral posturing, that everyone who isn't them is a Nazi based on some mythology that is retconned, if you would, that is historical revisionism. Um, and they keep pointing to that and saying that you're the Nazi, yet their actions are exactly the actions that these people took. And mind you, no better than the actions of all the communists. Somehow they get an excuse, though. It's okay that Mao killed hundreds of millions of people. It's okay that Stalin killed 20, 30, 40 million or more people. It's okay that the Khmer Rouge came in and killed millions of people. It's okay that people are starving in Venezuela and in Africa, that communism failed over and over again, and it caused strife and war and warlords, and the same as much of Central and South America that's implemented some sort of soft communism or fascism, because again, these are cousins. They're two sides of the same coin. So let's get back to this text here. By analyzing material from affiliated organizations, it will also consider how the network was able to foster contrasting relationships with sympathetic groups in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, allowing other leading neo-Nazis such as Colin Jordan to develop a wide role internationally. And I don't know who any of these people are, by the way. I know the guy. I can't think of his name. The guy that was real big in the American neo-Nazi movement. If you showed me his name, I would know it, but I can't think of it off top of my head. But back in the 60s. The author argues that the neo-Nazi network reached its height in the mid to late 1960s, and also highlights how in more recent times the WNS has taken on new roles as an evocation story in the neo-Nazi history. This process of accumulative extremism and inventing a new tradition within the neo-Nazi movement is important in recognizing, as it helps to understand the self-mythologizing nature of the neo-Nazi and wider neo-fascist cultures. Therefore, despite falling into this ambitions of creating a Nazi-inspired new global order, the last significance of the WNS has been its ability to inspire newer transitional aspirations among neo-Nazis and neo-fascists. Anyways, hey, what's up, Emp? What's up, Emperor? What's up, Kiz? Yeah, I don't know about that spook. I don't think so at all. I think that's a bunch of propaganda. Sanctions placed on the West. It was the most wealthy country in that region for decades. I don't think that that is correct at all. Sanctions don't make people go economically broke. Not when you have resources, and not when there are other nations that are communistic that would trade with you. So, I don't wanna go through all of this, but I just wanted to show you this paper. It talks about this, it talks about some names and stuff, but there's no denying that the neo-Nazis want National Socialism, right? And the claim is the Nazis were capitalists. The reason why this is because they did not completely eliminate markets, but neither did the Soviets. You can't eliminate markets, folks. The Soviets just had markets, and then they tried to undercut the prices in the West. The only reason why they were able to price anything is because the West had a pricing scale of their own based on market value, based on what people thought things were worth. So I'm just going to preface this. I came across this earlier. I don't know who this is. This is an article, but it's talking about these things. And it seems like the author of it is probably some sort of uh, ethnic nationalist. I'm not going to say white. I don't know his ethnicity, but and seemed to praise Hitler. So there was a video going around a little while back of a black man who was interviewed saying that yes, he believed in Hitler's ways. He was a National Socialist and a Nazi and yada yada yada. Like this is has nothing to do with race. Ideology and your ethnicity aren't intertwined. Mind you, there are things that you are going to be raised in your culture. And if you have a more ethnically homogenous culture, say like Scandinavian countries, right, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to get along and get together. You go to a country like Mexico, and there are dozens of different ethnicities amongst themselves. Now, people who are outsiders, they don't see that. But this is more or less the norm. You go to China, and again, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of different ethnicities. And you have one ethnicity, which is a minority, the Han, and they run all of the country. So I just want to read from this because this is a guy basically stating, his praise for National Socialism and Hitler. Uh, I think that should be kind of a sign that this guy understands what he believes and what the Nazis believed. National Socialism, an antidote and solution to the New World Order and the world's problems: nature, family, altruism, spirituality, economics, NSDAP. I hope this article inspires people to open their minds and think for themselves and to consider National Socialism as a system that can help bring dignity and prosperity back to all countries, races, and cultures. I want what's best for the planet. National Socialism is very different from what you have been taught. So, first off, I don't believe that there's dignity in forcing people to do things. That's a stripping of their dignity. Socialism requires that. In fact, the way you gain dignity is to be empowered. To be empowered means that you're given a chance, the freedom, the opportunity to, make use of your own wherewithal, your skills, your talents. So, in that, I think that there's a high amount of dignity in doing things for yourself, although you can't always, but you need to try and you need to strive. What socialism tends to want to incorporate is a system that that says, well, you can't do everything for yourself, therefore you're going to be forced to have things done for you, and you're going to be forced to do things for other people. But the other portion of this is the individuals saying that this system will bring prosperity, and that's never been true either. and in fact, Nazi Germany was going bankrupt. So, and it would have gone bankrupt eventually. I mentioned this last week. Anyways, it says it is important to realize that we have been fed so many lies about National Socialism and Adolf Hitler our whole lives by Hollywood and the education system, TV, etc. Now, again, this is this guy's belief. I'm just reading what he believes. So I know some people do believe this, and to some extent, maybe that is true. Uh, Regardless, I don't think that the genocide of people is ethical. But I don't think that Stalin is any more righteous or Mao or any of those other leaders than Hitler either. And what's odd to me is that the modern left, and they are leftists, just like Nazis were leftist, and this is a simple distinction, folks, a simple distinction. This comes from the French Revolution. The Nazis were revolutionaries. If they were on the right, they would have wanted to uphold the Weimar Republic, but they didn't. They wanted to change it. They wanted to change the whole system. They were revolutionaries. Read Hitler's writings. He did want to take over the world, just like communists do. Communists who are colonizers, by the way, though, again, use those words against you, saying that your history and your past is as colonizers, but yet their whole plan is to colonize the world and eliminate anyone and everyone who is not in line with their beliefs. So, it is important to realize that we have been fed so many lies about National Socialism and Adolf Hitler our whole lives. The propaganda is incessant, and there is a reason you may have been fed those lies. They don't want you to know the truth about National Socialism, its tremendous benefits, and that it's not a racist ideology. The victors write the history, and the Zionists won World War II, and they own the major news networks, yeah, TV, yada yada yada. And again, this is a belief system, and I know there are a lot of people who believe that the juice, they run everything. They don't, folks. Uh, is there a collection of powerful Jewish folks, influential Jewish folks? Absolutely. But you're going to have to convince me that the CIA, MI6, the Russian intelligence, Chinese intelligence, and all them are all run by the Jews. You're going to have to convince me that the Jesuits are, that the Catholic Church is, that the crown, the royal crown in England is, that all of the UN is, which is an occultist organization. And mind you, go listen to Morgan C. Fagan, or sorry, Myron C. Fagan, and his lectures on the Illuminati. I'm not saying he says everything he says is completely 100% correct, but he talks about this idea of using Jews as victims or whatever. But I think it's a little bit more complicated. And for me, if I boiled it down to simplicity, it would be that the nature of this world is that of Satan and the kingdom of Satan. So it's the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Satan, either way. And anyone not in the kingdom of God is in the kingdom of Satan. He said, I provided insight to National Socialism for a variety of sources. At the end of the article, there's a link to another called 12 Things You Were Not Told About Adolf Hitler, yada, yada, yada. I highly recommend it. So we can go through this whole thing. I basically just wanted to call attention to it, to the fact that these people were sitting here espousing what they uh, believe that the Nazis believe. Now, if these people were praising Hitler and the Nazis, wouldn't you think that they would want to get their economic systems correct, that their systems of ruling and controlling their nation correct? One more, and then I'll get to the academic paper. The truth about Hitler, they don't teach in schools any longer. So, of course, we have this meme here that he was a socialist, created universal health care, gave free homes to the homeless, created jobs for the jobless, veterinary animal lover, had a 99% popularity rate, gave free college education to all, brilliant speaker, passed strict gun control, eliminated poverty. And he actually is everything liberals crave, including racial segregation and laws befitting or behooving, that I should say, certain races and excluding others. That's what the left believes today. That's what CRT is based around. The little I gotcha thing that they do, though, is they talk about race instead of being directly linked to some sort of genetic and geological marker, right? They link it to a a modus operandi. They link it to how we act. So therefore, anyone who is against these beliefs, who is, let's say a black person or, some sort of brown person, as they like to say, or some sort of person of color, then they get to disparage that person and say, well, they're acting white. And the funny thing is, this has been around forever. This is what, you know, uh, many of black friends I've had over the years that are, basically not ghetto have been told. And I got ghetto black friends too. They got that ghetto thing going. That's cool. But, just be a good person. How about that? How about not, being a jerk to everybody and whatever else? You know, People grow up in different circumstances, so they're going to have a little bit different behavior and attitude. But I don't think that a black guy who isn't ghetto should be said he is treated as being white. And trust me, I know plenty of ghetto white trash, plenty. So, anyways, whatever. Um, The truth about National Socialism, they aren't anything but far right. The neo Nazis and neo Confederate groups who took to Charlottesville to rally were not conservative, nor Republican, nor right wing. And their fight with Antifa was a battle of leftist against leftist, according to Jeffrey Lord of the American Spectator. Yes, yes, that's exactly what it was, just like it was in Nazi Germany. It was leftist versus leftist, the black shirts versus the brown shirts. That's what we are watching. The left will say, well, Hitler, he got rid of this, and that. He got rid of these socialists and these commies. Well, yeah, because they were enemies to his political power. That always happens. You think Stalin did any different? We have the pictures of people disappearing. I mean, come on, folks. And of course, it's not you all. Most of you all know. The media has tried hard to portray the hate groups that rallied in Charlottesville as the right, but the truth is they are far from it. A brief study of history reveals the Democratic Party's historical ties to pro-slavery. We all know that. So why are modern Confederate sympathizers and Nazis portrayed in the media as far right or as right? Nazis were, after all, National Socialists, not conservatives. Right. And then the left goes, well, that's just a name, but you don't think because you call yourself this or that. No, actually, I believe your actions dictate who you are, not your words. Let's turn to economist Ludwig von Mises and his classic text of the Australian School of Economics, Socialism, the first edition of the book, refuting virtually every form of socialism ever devised. Really good book. Love von Mises. Very, very, he's a very easy read and entertaining, in my opinion. I mean, if you like nerd stuff, appeared in 1922, and as another famed economist, F.A. Hayek, would write in his foreword to the book, when socialism first appeared in 1922, its impact was profound. It gradually but fundamentally altered the outlook of many of the young idealists returning to their university studies after World War I. I know, for I was one of them. 25 years later, von Mises updated the book with an epilogue which took on Nazis, fascists, and communists in the aftermath of World War II. It is important to realize that fascism and Nazism were socialist dictatorships. The communists, both the registered members of the communist parties and the fellow travelers, stigmatized fascism and Nazism as the highest and last and most depraved stage of capitalism. So let me read that again. The communists, both the registered members of the communist parties and the fellow travelers, they stigmatized purposefully fascism and Nazism as the highest and last and most depraved stage of capitalism. This is in perfect agreement with their habit of calling every party which does not unconditionally surrender to the dictates of Moscow, even the German Social Democrats, the classical party of Marxism, hirelings of capitalism. And that is true. The Marxist kind of party wing of Germany at the time, even though Hitler did get rid of them, so did he didn't get rid of them, but Stalin decried them because they were still participating in means of market capitalism. It wasn't socialist enough. It wasn't centralized and controlled enough. There wasn't enough of an iron fist, which isn't so much true in Nazi fascism or Nazi Germany. We could argue if the Nazis were fascist or not. I say yes, based on Mussolini's the doctrines of fascism. Other people say no. Mussolini was a socialist too, so whatever. It is of much greater consequence that the communists have succeeded in changing the semantic connotation of fascism. Fascism was a variety of Italian socialism. Dictatorship and violent oppression of all dissenters are today exclusively socialist institutions. The philosophy of Nazis, the German National Socialist Labor Party, is the purest and most consistent manifestation of the anti-capitalistic and socialistic spirit of our age. 100%. I mean, because when we say capitalism, which is Marx's language, what we're actually talking about is free markets, free trade, volunteerism, meaning that there are no restrictions by the government or who I can do business with. And of course, there might be some restrictions or laws for the greater good for some reason or another. Normally, we would call this regulation, but generally speaking, we do those things for moral purposes. Like back in the medieval times, there were usury laws within banking because they saw it immoral to charge excessive amounts of interest. Now, I'm actually mixed on this issue. I don't think usury is a good thing, but I also don't think that you should be dictating interest rates because that is a market uh, a process of the market, something that gets dictated by the market and how people are buying and selling. And so to really restrict usury is just another means of centralized economic planning. And I don't think it's effective. So, all right, I'm going to read this last paragraph here, and then we're going to get into that paper again. The slogan into which the Nazis considered their economic philosophy well, I'm not going to read the German. The Commonwealth, what is it? Gemeinnütz Gerd von Eigennutz. Yeah, it's been so long since I've done since I studied German. The Commonwealth ranks above private profit, and likewise the idea underlying the American New Deal and the Soviet management of economic affairs. Exactly. And, again, I will state in the United States, we live in a socialist nation. We do not live in a free market capitalist nation. We have some markets that are yet free. But really, the only markets that are free are those that are the black markets, and those are regulated by gangsters. It implies that profit seeking business harms the vital interest of the immense majority, and that it is the sacred duty of the popular government to prevent the emergence of profits by public control of production and distribution. All right, I see I got chats. Chats are going all over. And he was a vegetarian. That's right. Notice how the left loves veganism. Just saying, folks. Samuel, you've been called a coconut and Oreo so many times. Are you half black? It's culture, not skin tone. Yeah, there's some people that'll argue differently. And they'll argue because they'll take a sub-Saharan African, they'll say, well, their IQ is like around 60 or something. And we're talking about tribal people. And they'll get into the whole IQ race thing, except for we all we know is that with more nutrition, you seem to get a higher IQ. There seems to be something about parenting. I think stable society has something to do with it. So I wouldn't expect tribal people. Also, I would say there's an epigenetic component. So I wouldn't expect tribal people to have the abilities to deal with more complex things that have occurred over course of society. But they're certainly black folks who are smart and geniuses. So I don't understand just because there might be a higher proportion elsewhere. Like, there's a higher proportion of Jews. Ashkenazi Jews have a 115 IQ on average. Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese have something like 110 on average over. For them, it would be 100 if we graded them equally. But I'm saying, as far as most of the Western world or Americans, because the average, the middle point, more or less, is the mean, that is 100. And everyone lumps around there about to 110, 115 or so. And then you start getting into the exceptional range around 120. And by the time you're in the 130s, you're at 2% of the population, less than 2% of the population. So, in any case, I mean, I think there are various numerous reasons why that distribution would be different, not just based on some uh, racial thing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, people. I look at it too over the centuries, like people migrating and breeding. Some families are smarter than others. They're going to continue to hopefully breed more intelligence. But I'm not like I don't believe in eugenics, of course, or stuff like that, where you try and create that. I think that generally, where people have done that, the elites, they failed. So sunlight quote a lot. Being black is interesting. Oh, you said both your parents are black. Okay. But I was raised around white people and people. Oh, okay. I get. Okay. I was saying earlier. Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I find this a lot. Um, it's kind of gross, honestly, that you have to be like, ghetto. That because I grew up in an area with a large black population, pretty large, and in my school had a lot of black kids in middle school and high school and all, so it just wasn't a thing to even think about. Um, well, one, I wasn't raised that way. I mean, because my dad's a minister, a Christian, and just weren't raised that way. But two, like to even think about, like I would just note, you just notice this kid's cool, that kid's not, and it was never like what's your race or you're not acting black or whatever. But, I grew up in the 90s too, and like, middle school, high school. And so, we had the old what is the wigger and the yo boy. I mean, that all existed. But again, that's a cultural thing, right? That's a persona of a culture of the persona being the expectation of the outside world kind of put on you, and that's all you present. That's all that is. So, anyways, so I was somewhere around here. We were on page 14 when I left off. I think I was getting into the next uh paragraph here, but this is Soviet and Nazi economic planning in the 1930s. Actually, I'll just go all the way back to the top. Oh, this thing's gonna be weird. Well, never mind. I was gonna show you the title and all that. The guy's name is Ten Men or something like that. Uh, let's start here. Uh, the commissariat for light industry was subordinate to provincial authorities. I believe we were talking about the how the Nazis were running things and how the Soviets were running things. That's what this paper is, of course. But the other two commissariats re- retained independent authority, enterprise and heavy industry. Consequently, uh, were subjected to dual authority from the industry section of the central government and from the regional branch of the political apparatus. Enterprises were subjected to different kinds of control depending on whether they were classified as light or heavy industry. This could easily happen that similar enterprises would fall under different administrations and my page doesn't want to scroll. Ah. And principle, the means of handling the Peterborough's economic decisions were preventing the economy from breaking up. And in any case, so I talked about this. I know I read this last week. This is wait, no, no, no. Okay, no wonder why that didn't make any sense. I'm like, what in the world's going on? This thing's jumping on me. It says it could easily happen that similar enterprise would fall under different administrations and therefore different lines of authority, which makes regional as well as branch planning particularly difficult. In any case, I talked about this the light and heavy industry that they would regulate what they thought was more important. Again, go read the Vampire Economy. I've read some of it on here before, but it's when we're talking about books and all, obviously there's always the deal of copyright infringement, but I'm adding commentary, so I don't care about that because as far as I'm concerned, it's fair use. But um, but just to read through a book, on stream just takes time. I've kind of sort of tried, and you know, I could read it straight, but then copyright infringement, right? So the way I do it is makes it fair use. Samuel said here, yeah, the Ghetto thing really wasn't appealing to me. I agree with you. I mean, you don't have to accept the degeneracy that they want you to accept. Yeah, which is a shame too, man. Because then like too, you get like if you are a black guy and whatever you've grown up with it, you know yourself, whatever. But you got to deal with that crap. And I've had fights with friends about this because they were saying stuff, and I brought up various people who are kind of media personalities. I'm like, look at how they're being treated, and you think that that's okay because of politics. And so, what the left really does is, no matter what, their politics always has to be the moral righteousness. It has to be the moral right, and this all goes back to humanism and all that. Getting rid of God back in the Enlightenment and so forth. And it's basically because they're all narcissist and self-serving. They have these characteristics of the dark triad, and they therefore you know must have their beliefs happen. In fact, I was watching so yesterday I turned on Adam's Adamcast, or Adam Krigler's show, um and I don't really watch Adam. Every now and again, I'll click him on for a few minutes, watch him, but, Adam seems cool and all, whatever. He had Mikey Harlow on the other day. I don't really watch Mikey either, but, Mike Harlow, I, follow some of his stuff, just catch him every now and again. And they were talking about Karlin Boroshenko. Now, I've talked about Karlin in the past because Karlin is a person who has these dark triad traits. And so I just caught the end of Adam's show. I went back to watch it because I wanted to hear what they had to say about Karlin. And I didn't know Mikey did a whole video. So I watched that last night while I was in bed. And it's everything I thought she was because I observed it from her. I observed it on her Twitter. I observed it in her streams. In fact, I was watching her a good bit, and then I stopped, and I started kind of watching her again, and then I stopped again when she started doing the whole, "Oh yeah, say CRT's anti-white is white supremacy and blah blah blah." That whole thing she does. Made a whole video about it. But that's the kind of person I'm talking about. She's got that dark triad. She's always the victim. People are always going after her. It's all this stuff. It's always a manipulation. To her own narcissism, who she is, and her power, her ability to keep herself in power and control. And I have a certain kind of like very hardcore understanding of this because of my professional and personal lives. So I know a lot about that cluster B personality disorder thing. I've not only worked with a lot of them and dealt with the professional side of it, but for years as a broken man, I was attracted to it as well. So I have a lot of understanding of this, and I've seen it on the outside too. Being once I kind of the scales fell off my eyes, I could see the outside, looking in at other people and watching it happen. So, anyways, I should read this dang text. Oh, I wanted to check entropy real quick. Okay. Make sure I'm not leaving you guys hanging if you leave me anything over there. So it says, in addition, Gosplan, the central planning, as opposed to operating agency, was being purged. Starting in the late 1930s, political qualifications replaced technical ones for staffer or for staffing Gosplan. The bourgeois specialists were replaced with the party faithful, which I've talked about many a times. This is what when the left goes, oh no, they just left capitalists in. They left the industrialists in. No, they didn't. They took their businesses from them and put in party members, unless the industrial plant owner was already a party member or at least faithful to them. And the party faithful were replaced in turn by even more faithful party members. Yeah, they did that too. Lots of purges, guys, because leftism always purges itself until you get to your oligarchy. And you start with oligarchy more or less, but it's in the guise of mass revolution. Like all the Antifa people out in the streets, they're all going to be put against the wall. They'll all be smoked. There'll be one guy, there'll be a couple that are some leadership cell that might have some say in some policies for a little while, and then they'll get exterminated until I don't know, Patrice Garza or something is the queen. So that's more or less how it works, right? So she's the one up front. Everyone else is an underling. They all go away. District planning committees suffered similar fates. Almost half of their chairmen at the start of 1937 had been chairman less than a year. Only 10% have been placed for 3 years. 10% maintained their job for 3 years. What do you think the turnover is on that? Less than a year? The majority of them? Yeah, lefties. You cannot argue that this is not the same practical application that goes on under communism, because it is. It was not a system that rewarded technical expertise or performance. Only in 1934 were uniform planning indicators adapted, enabling Gosselin to compile data for the economy as a whole in a consistent manner. And as might be expected, the initial forms were seriously incomplete. In 1935, forms, for example, did not ask for data on the net investment to enable construction materials to be allocated, meaning this was basically mismanaged, right? So they're saying, they compiled data from the economy as a whole in a consistent manner, and the initial forms were seriously incomplete because you're trying to collect a bunch of stuff for people and you're doing it by force and doing a lot of changes. It's not very thorough, right? It's not very well controlled. And that's what happens as people start implementing these systems. There's mass poverty, starvation, all this other stuff for a while. And then, 15, 20 years later, it starts working sort of. It says for complete costs to show the need for financing. So right. The 1935 forms, for example, did not ask for data on net investment to enable construction materials to be allocated for complete costs to show the need for financing or for data that were comparable to past data. Only as experience was gained throughout the 1930s was the scope of central planning extended throughout the economy. A Western visitor to Gosselin in 1936 to 37 argued that he did not get a coherent view of the Soviet planning because so this is the Soviet method. Okay. A coherent planning system did not exist. What existed was a priority system of a fairly simple kind. The elaborate governmental procedure for drawing up the plans was, in principle, the means of handling the Pittsburgh's economic decision while preventing the economy from breaking up. Okay, that's what I read earlier. All right, guys. So I'm going to probably go a couple minutes over if I can. Make sure that I get some of this read so we can get through it. Don't mind the 58 pages. There's a lot of gaps in them. Since planning was loose and somewhat random, much of the economy functioned outside the plan. Officially recognized market transactions were used for many activities. Material balances were only calculated for 150 commodities in 1934. So material balances were only calculated for 105 commodities, meaning that as far as them deciding how to set prices, there was 105 commodities they were going to set prices at. Now, you can probably come up with 105 pretty quick if you start thinking about materials that people used often back then, So you have, of course, agricultural type commodities, food for animals that might be commodities, right? If you have a farm yourself, you have the animals, obviously. You have the lands. You have things like milk. All that's like basic stuff, like stay alive. But on top of that, you're going to have commodities for housing, like lumber, right? Brick, mortar. You're going to have things like cotton, twine, twill, whatever, wool. So you can quickly, if you sit down and you start writing down, oh, what do I need? What's everything I own in my house made out of? Well, today probably plastic, but not back then. So, uh, and that's not even just a fraction of how economies work, anyway. So, some of this stuff, like I said, a lot of this would be specifically just food or food for animals or different types of grains or vegetables or whatever. Myriad other goods were allocated piecemeal by other agencies by the market. In addition, enterprises dealt with the divergence between the plan and reality by reallocating materials among themselves by, um, and it says in quotes, BALT, the use of personal influence for obtaining certain favors for which a firm or individual is not legally or formally entitled. Bolt was used to obtain both centrally planned goods and market goods without queues. The market and underground economies were important parts of the resource allocation process. So they used the unregulated market for part of their process, as I have said before. Uh, Samuel, you said so. Hitler's main influence was what exactly? I don't know if that's rhetorical or facetious. Uh, he's pretty influenced by Marx, from what I understood, but he didn't like the Jewish part of Marx. He said he rejected Jewish Bolshevism and Jewish capitalism. And yeah, I believe his influences. I think the idea and the alliance with Mussolini. A lot of that was about, yeah, we have ties to this other sort of socialism because the big movement of socialism was communism, was Marxism, and a lot of the other types of socialists were tamped down. Now the Fabians were doing well in England and more or less still run England, in my opinion, but um, as they weren't about revolution, right? And this is the big thing with the Marxists. The Marxists, they crave this revolution. It's kind of crazy. They want it. I've heard Tim Pool talk about this a couple times, and I believe him. He's been out in the streets. He's talked to these people, and they're like, "Oh, if I could only be martyred like this communist martyr," and it's like, what? Like that's crazy. Now, as a Christian who believes that the early church, especially, had a desire to be martyred like Christ, and we should actually, I think that our suffering on earth, the things that we go through, uh, we should take with patient endurance and have joy about because Christ suffered, and that's part of our that's part of our imaging of him. That's part of our taking on him, right? But that's a really different thing. That's a spiritual religious thing. But that should tell you about the Marxist believer and its spiritual religious connotations to them. So, anyways, this aspect of central planning emerged with planning itself. There was no lag. Enterprises in 1930 were using stocks of materials to barter with other enterprises. It was impossible to function without these exchanges. A contemporary report estimated there were 2,500 provincial barter agents in Moscow in the 1930s. The Nazi planning administration also was in a continual state of flux. Now, mind you, guys, I started back off in the middle of this. I thought we were talking about Germany. That was all about the Soviets, but the author here is going to show you the similarities. Unlike the Soviets' 5-year plan, the Nazis' 4-year plan did not replace the previous administration of the economy. So this is what I was talking about. When you implement these things and replace them, there's a bunch of just horrible consequences. The Nazis didn't do that. Apparently they were a little bit smarter, a little bit, not much. They're both socialists. So, um, instead, it was superimposed on an existing government bureaucracy with which it competed for resources. It was not unusual among Nazi activities in having a new bureaucracy headed by Herman. How do you say his name? I can read it, but it's not pronounced the way I'm thinking it's pronounced. Anyways, and composed largely of military men to direct it. Is it U? Is the umlaut over the O? Growing? I think that's what it is. I know. I don't remember, man. I think it's grew, growing. All the new organization was a rival to the Air Force, also undergrowing the Army and the Economics Ministry, all of which participated in the economic planning and administration. Further complications came from delays in staffing the 4 year plan. A secret strategy paper in 1938 acknowledged that the new bureaucracy was grossly understaffed and inefficient. Overlapping the and confusing controls were a hallmark of socialist planning in the 1930s. Just always, really. The extent of the 4 year plan is shown in Figure 1. Oh, by the way, this idea of superimposing your bureaucracy over the one already established is exactly what the left has done in the United States in recent years, but has been doing for a long period of time, but most specifically, very, very, very recent years. Samuel says I pronounced it correctly. Okay. Grü. Let's remember my German teacher with the umlauts and the rolling of the R's and all that. And he would always go umlaut, like dot dot. He's an interesting guy. He's a cool guy. He's kind of a hippie. Hiked the Appalachian Trails, was biked through Europe, lived in Spain for some years, wound up in Germany, learned German because he met people there, ended up living with them for 6 years. Just was basically homeless, lived with people, and learned German that way. I really liked him. Came to visit him after I think I got out of the Marine Corps, and he moved away, moved back home to Pittsburgh. It sucked. Not when I got out of the Marine Corps, that is, when I got on boot camp. So, anyways. Further complications came from delays and staff. Yeah, okay, I read that. Overlapping and confusing controls were a hallmark of socialistic planning in the 1930s. The extent of the 4 year plan is shown in Figure 1, which shows the planning's organizational structure before the 1938 reorganization. It can be seen that the plan reached into most parts of the economy, although it focused on exploiting domestic supplies or creating domestic substitutes for raw materials. Other sectors, such as transport, were not included in the plan, but were part of the power struggle between the 4 year plan and other branches of the government. The 4 year plan was not as comprehensive as the 5 year plan. The 4 year plan consequently did not engage in material balancing. The composition of production was centrally directed through the capital market and the allocation of steel. But the Nazis did not try to anticipate inconsistencies between their various activities. So, partially due to the incomplete coverage of the 4 year plan, this omission also was a reflection of Nazi administrative chaos. I mean, the Nazis didn't quite have it figured out, but they both took different approaches, and they both had problems, right? Shortages did not develop and had to be dealt with through the plan. The state did not own industry in Germany. It consequently needed to have a legal form with which to implement the plan. The Nazis signed long-term contracts with industry groups to buy their output at fixed prices. So, this is government subsidies, right? And the point of subsidizing and buying these things out were to get the prices fixed. Because what happens is you fix the output, how much supply comes out, because, oh, I know I have a guaranteed government contract. And then you can fix the prices at whatever price you want because, well, you're the government. These contracts were nominally contracts. Should say nominal, I would assume. Contracts expressing agreement by both parties, but the two parties were decidedly unequal. The Nazis viewed private property as conditional on its use, not as a fundamental right. Boom. There it is. Mic drop. Boom. No. But duh. And when the tankies say to me, "Do you know the difference between personal property and private property?" And I tell them, "Yeah, private property is property you get to defend with your life, and personal property is something you give to me while I'm in prison and you can take away at any point." That's they're trying to play a semantical game. "Well, you can have property." No, you don't believe in private property, and you certainly don't believe in personal property. Right now, they don't believe in universal health care, right? Because you have to comply with what they want, or you don't get services. That's not universal health care. That's conditional health care. Hell, I don't even believe in conditional health care. I think that, as long as you pay your fees, whatever the service fees might be to the doctor, and mind you, in my system, in a market system, you would have doctors who would maybe have lower prices than other people, not because they want to, because they're a better quality of service, but because they want to be able to help more people. And in the end, that might actually do better for their business, right? Because people like cheap prices. The Nazis viewed private property as conditional on its use, not as a fundamental right. If the property was not being used to further Nazi goals, it could be nationalized. Professor Junkers of the Junkers airline plant refused to follow the government's bidding in 1934. The Nazis thereupon took over the plant, compensating Junkers for his loss. At least they did that. I mean, but what was the compensation? Because just compensation is rarely just when it comes from the government, right? Like, what's his name up in Ruby Ridge? Like they killed his kid and his wife. He got lots of money. Was that really just compensation though? Let's see here. Let me read another page or two. Get us a little bit further along. The Nazis thereupon took over the planet, compensating Junkers for his losses. This was the context in which other contracts were negotiated. A more prominent and important exception to the rule of private property was the Hermann Gruing's works. Established in 1937, they employed over 500,000 workers by 1941. The motives for establishing this group was government-owned enterprises were varied. Government-owned enterprises. Does that sound like free markets to you? Capitalism, as it were, capitalism. Um, yeah, no. Growing wanted to increase the domestic supply of goods to further Germany's autarky, to keep prices down by increasing competitive pressure on private industry, and to add credibility to his threats to nationalize companies. Takeovers like the Jenkins airline plant and threats of takeovers were used to encourage compliance with government production plans. When a major steel company, yeah, good luck pronouncing that, Gutshof Nug, hold on, News, what, New Shoot, Goof off to New Shoot. Do you pronounce the E on the end? I don't remember. Uh, to re, uh, When a major steel company refused to use low-grade domestic ore because they were not profitable, Gruings threatened to incorporate part of the firm into his works. Domestic low-grade ores were to be used to promote the four-year plan goal of autarky, even at the expense of private profits. Whoever owned the plants, yeah, I guess I'll read this here. Just trying to see what's left, guys. All right. Sorry, it's kind of jumping around on me, so that's why I'm like not being so precise with the control here. Centralized control of agriculture was a prominent feature in both economies. Soviet planning in the 1930s was dominated by the expression of food collectivization and agriculture. It was a dominant thing that happened here in the United States too, and we never stopped doing it. It's why we have so much garbage food in the supermarket. Um, NEP founder in the late 1920s on the inability of the state to get the grain it needed from independent peasants. Stalin returned to the techniques of war communism, forcing the peasants into collective farms and coercing the desired output from them. That, my friends, is called neo feudalism. They are the same thing. Remember that whenever you talk to a communist, that they are talking about neo feudalism. Agriculture, therefore, was within the scope of government control. Land could not be bought or sold. The bulk of output could not be sold except through the government. Peasants didn't retain small private plots whose output could be sold privately, and that's serfdom. So, and you have to understand the difference. Serfs could actually own a little bit of stuff, slaves couldn't, but it worked either way under feudalism. The scope for individual decisions by agricultural producers was very small. And by the way, folks, this is the you can go back 4,000, 5,000 years. This this was the state of things throughout most of history. The left want to go backward. They don't want to move forward, despite what they tell you. It's part of the climate change thing. We have to move backward. We can't have all the industry and machines. All right, Samuel, I'll see you, man. I'm going to wrap up here anyways. So, I saw a spook left, but yeah, I'm going to get out of here. I'm just trying to get to a good point to stop. So, I think, see, it keeps jumping. We'll just leave it there with the agricultural bit. I know I'm on page 8. I'll probably remember that. So let me check entropy real quick. Make sure I don't have any donations over there. Architect of Fate. Good afternoon, Bill. Looks like I'll be seeing you at the end of January, start of February. Oh, well, cool, man. Good. Well, congratulations, dude. Uh, give me a call or send me a text, and I'll help you move in. So, um, I help old architect find a place in the old West Virginia. He's not super close to me, but close enough. And it's actually an area I want to move to. Um, so cool beans. And I will do the same for anyone who can find a place out here and wants to buy it. And you want to be a liberty minded individual in West Virginia, and you want to grow the state, and you believe in basically saying screw off globalist. You can get a hold of me one way or another. You have to figure it out, but you can always email me, guys. It's listed on the YouTube at least. You just have to go through my channel a little bit. It's there. I will help you out. I will send you pictures. I will talk to you. I will do whatever. All I ask is that you pay for my gas. And Architect of Fate was a little bit more kind and kind of gave me a little bit of extra cash where I could have bought lunch, probably dinner too. So, and that's always appreciated. So, anyways, um, you love these streams. They're helpful in red pilling. Well, yeah, buddy. I mean, I'm glad people enjoy what I do. I mean, you have to understand, I started doing this. I wasn't doing live streams, right? I just started that this year, really, other than the It's Just for the Memes. And I I wanted to do this for years. It's been a single dad. It's hard, you know. And I was doing it with pre-recorded videos, and I found I it's just easier for me instead of doing all the stuff on the back end because of my time to just live stream and whatever. And I know I'm gonna say stupid stuff and make mistakes and whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to be perfect on here. Uh, I think I said a lot of, like, silly things on Monday, uh, but I don't think it was anything major to the message, uh, that I was saying, and, like, something keeps ringing around that I said something about, Thomas Aquinas and Augustine being kinda contemporaries. And I'm pretty sure I said that they didn't live around the same time. They're like separated by like 600-700 years or something, but they kind of lived in a certain atmosphere or circumstance. I feel like, uh, but I kind of meant that they were more contemporaries and their influence and all that kind of stuff as well. So, but I think about these things. I say lots of stuff, and I know how people twist things. But as long as you guys are appreciating it, I'm gonna keep doing it, and it's whatever. I mean, I'll probably keep doing it anyways. I feel I need to say something. You don't see my email in the description? Here, let me hook you up, man. Let's go right to my channel page. I'll pull it up here at the screen share. You go right here to about. Boom. View email address. Boom. Right there it is. So, um, but Matt, you also have like, you know how to get a hold of me. So you're just saying it wasn't in my description of the thing. Yeah, I expect people to be a little bit less lazy than maybe I should. People are like, "Where's the link for this or that?" And half the time they don't even look first. But anyways, I mean, I'm not necessarily even talking about it on here. I'm just talking about it on any channel. I've seen it plenty of times. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Appreciate y'all being here with me. I should be back Sunday. I should stream Monday as well. Thursday, I don't know. Thursday or Friday with the holidays, I don't know. We're already not doing the It's Just for the Memes. I have my mom's birthday next week. Christmas is coming up. Stuff. So we'll see. We'll see. But I will try and stream Monday. So Sunday, Monday, I shall return. Yes, you have no way of contacting me. Yes. Um, anyways, I shall return. So thanks everyone for watching once again. Hey, this has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.